Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan, MS Business Ukraine War News Update for the 17th of August 2023. It's the second part thereof. The first part is out. Just to let you know, I've included all the links to my hits and losses section just so you can peruse those videos and sources in your own time in case I sometimes get penalized for showing some of that stuff. I do try and show these things, but it just gets really frustrating when, you know, you put all this time and effort in and YouTube says, nah, ain't having that. So I just thought to help you guys, I'd put all the links for that section in the video description, so go and check that out. Anyway, this is now onto the front line. I've done a frontline update this today already, right? So I'm really just going to rush through this. Okay, the northeast sector, there are some claims of some Russian advances in the Kupiansk area and in the Karmazinivka area, although it might just be sort of rejigging of maps a little bit. I don't know that there's too much activity going on around here. Andrew Perpetua said that around here, a lot of his map changes were indeed just rejigging stuff, getting to know where the front lines are. Kupiansk, we had Sursky visiting up here, saying that the Russians are really trying to break through to Kupiansk with their Storm Z sort of convict units there. Slight bit of successes according to Surat maps for the Russians in that area, but I don't think too much to worry about at the moment. And then we come down to Bakhmut. I don't have too much information outside of the Klishchivka area, and most of the information is coming from pro-Russian sources that seems to indicate, or they are claiming, that Klishchivka has been retaken by the Russians. You've had a number of these claims over the last 2 or 3 days, and that possibly there are some gains for the Russians just northwest of Kurdyivka, as according to Surat maps. But I don't know about this. On the one hand, it is odd that the Ukrainians have kept quite quiet about activity that's going on here. They normally talk about when they have successes here, you normally hear about it, and not hearing about anything could mean that the Russians have counterattacked quite successfully around Klishchivka, or it could just be wishful thinking on the part of the Russians. Andrew Perpetua's not adapted any of his mapping yet, so it would indicate to me that actually, at the moment, I would think possibly it's unrealistic that the Russians would have taken Klishchivka back. As well, it's not somewhere you particularly want to take back, given that it sits downhill from all of these positions up here, and you can just absolutely hammer the Russians in position there from above. So I don't know if it's somewhere there. I think it's safer for them to take the railway line as a defensive line, but hey, what do I know? Anyway, so those are the claims. We're not hearing much from the Ukrainians out from that area, whereas the Russians are sort of talking up successes there. Avdiivka, not too much reported, or nothing really of any significance. There is fighting, repelled attacks, of course, just no territorial exchanges. In the Uruzhany Staromyorsky area, we are seeing continued success for the Ukrainians. They're pushing down into Zavitny Bazhanya. They're also pushing towards Kermenchik from the west. So I think that is to make it untenable for the Russians to remain in Novodonetsk and now have to pull out. So I think that's a clever thing. Try and straighten off the front line there, as well as trying to move in to this sort of area of high ground from the side. The Syrian maps have shown some gains for the Russians, although for the Ukrainians, although I think that's sort of a long time behind what Andrew Perpetua claimed 3 or 4 days ago. Pressure on Priyatno from the north, but I think you're going to see this area be really significant for the Ukrainians as they're pushing down to Staromyivka, and then we start getting that major trench line network there. Kremenchuk's going to be important for that as well. Interdict these important sort of roads coming around the area. Now, that's important because once you get past that defensive line, it's potentially easier to get to Mariupol. There aren't any further lines of trenches behind Velika Novosilka as the Staromyivka trench, as far as I'm aware. Okay, so that's good news for the Ukrainians in that area, and we move further to the west, and we have good news here, where the Ukrainians are making gains. They appear to be using a wider range of equipment in this area, which means that we might be seeing some of the counteroffensive, battalions being used, brigades being used in this area. The Ukrainians have made gains according to both mappers, the Andrew Perpetua, the pro-Ukrainian mapper, and Suryat Maps, the pro-Russian mapper, blue and red. Although there's some rejigging up here, I don't know that that is actual counterattack. It looks like it's an old Russian gain, as according to Andrew Perpetua, that he's just sort of rejigging, and then possibly a minor rejig from Suryat Maps as well. Not quite sure what that represents. It could just again be a bit of a rejig from Andrew Perpetua, or they might have attacked there. They might have counterattacked in between these two Ukrainian offensive maneuvers. So there's a lot of activity going on around Robotna. The Ukrainians are moving down towards Verbove. They're hammering Verbove with artillery. There are claims that the elite forces are being brought from Kopani area and from Tokmak to try and shore up the defenses here. So I think the Russians are quite worried about this. And Novopokrovka could well be in the crosshairs at some point soon. We'll see whether the Ukrainians can move through and take Robotna today, or whether it'll be one of these difficult settlements where it takes them days and days to take it. But they seem to be doing well there. But the question is always at what cost? This is quite a costly area for the Ukrainians, but they're definitely gathering momentum. I think this week has been much more favourable for the Ukrainians on the southern front. And then we've got a weird situation developing here. So this is an area of a lot of operational security for the Ukrainians. So you don't hear that much about what's going on until after it's happened. So we heard about the bridgehead in Kozachi Lahiri about 5 days after it actually happened, right? Suryat Maps and a number of pro-Russian sources are claiming that the Ukrainians have been entirely pushed out of Kozachi Lahiri. And that the bridgehead has been eliminated. And then you have other Russian sources saying that the Russians have no counter battery ability around here, and that they are unable to eliminate the bridgehead. So you've got two direct contradictions of what is going on here from Russian sources alone, nothing from Ukrainian sources. So it could be that Ukrainians have been pushed right out this bridgehead, that apparently they were doing well at in pushing 2 ways from there, and there was fighting within Kozachi Lahiri to the west. But some of these sources are claiming otherwise, and I guess we'll have to wait and see if any pro-Ukrainian sources come out with any information. Not heard anything about the Antonivsky Bridge area or Holoprestan either. But I just thought it's interesting that the Russians are bigging up, kicking the Ukrainians out there, and some of it, I think, some of the claims are like they did it days ago. It's just like that doesn't accord with any of the other info that I've been privy to. But there you go. The long and the short of it is the Ukrainians are doing well, I think, on the south. Unsure whether the Ukrainians are finding it difficult in Bakhmut at the moment after some consistently good weeks there. And up in the northeast, it's fairly similar. The Russians appear to be making some minor gains, but it's certainly slowed down a lot from what it was. And then Kherson, hey, not quite sure. It's all a bit hush. Okay, so that's a frontline update, as I've told you this morning. Right, going on to military aid here. So there is an interesting article in Forbes on the collapsing Soviet army, leaving behind dozens of IMR-2 engineering vehicles. The Ukrainian army eagerly snatched them up. It's worth reading this. It's that the most common armored engineering vehicle in Ukrainian service is an ex-Soviet classic, the IMR-2. Basically, so you hear about the Bergepanzers, the Vicents, and the DAX, and the Challenger recovery vehicles, American M88s, and all this kind of stuff, Leopard 2Rs. But actually, the most common one they have is this ex-Soviet one, the IMR-2, basically an old T-72 tank chassis with a crane in the place of its turret, plus a hull-mounted dozer blade. So these are useful because they can not only be used to recover other vehicles that have been damaged or abandoned, but they can also have an attachment that can be used as a kind of mine clearance device. They can be used to help build trenches. They can be used to construct buildings and stuff. Like, these are really useful tanks all round, or bits of kit all round. So interesting article talking about how the Ukrainians got a load of these from the Russians, and in fact have captured a bunch of these as well. And the question is, do the Russians have uh, enough of their own AEVs? Something that's been talked about a lot by people like Trentelenko. Is all part of the logistics asymmetry, where the Ukrainians have a logistical advantage to the Russians over the Russians, and that would also include, armored recovery vehicles and armored engineering vehicles. Anyway, uh, just moving on from that, no assembly required Swedish arms deliveries to Ukraine. This is Oryx's list. The Swedish have pledged some new equipment: RB99 AIM 120 and AAMs for NASAMs. So these are munitions for the air defense missile system, mine clearance equipment, transport vehicles. It's a bit sort of vague, and ammunition and spare parts for the STRV 122 and CV90. Well, loads of people got onto me yesterday because there was Struve 122 and there was the CV90 equivalent in like Swedish language, but the source I said was referring to had the Swedish equivalent of the CV90 and CV90. So I was like, that's a bit weird. So this must be the Leopard 2 version that the Swedes have. And everyone's like, no, that's the CV90. That's their translation CV90. So I was like, fair enough. It's just weird that they put both. But this is a correct listing, which is to say that is the Leopard 2, the Swedish version of the Leopard 2, and CV90. Anyway, whatever. Challenger 2, with two captured Russians somewhere behind the front line. I don't think this is with captured Russians. So I'm going to show you this anyway. It's not captured Russians. These are two Ukrainians, I believe, just filming to the side without their tops on. He's got his hands behind his back, but you see later they're taking pictures of these. So those aren't captured Russians at all. That's someone talking absolute nonsense. And in fact, this is a cut-off version of the longer footage which shows these guys taking pictures of this. I think this is other claims are that this is on a training ground and it's not actually on the front line. So will we see Challenger 2s in the next few days? I don't know. Possibly. Is this a Challenger 2 on the front line? Probably not, especially when you've got guys without their tops on because it's a really sunny day taking pictures of it. Anyway, I love this. I've seen a few memes about this that saying, talking about like it looks like they're playing Monopoly or something. But no. Anyway, Commander in Chief Zaluzhny has met with US and UK chaps, the kind of like his equivalents. And I'm like, I don't want to be too stereotypical here, but someone in these three, so that's Zaluzhny, he's a Ukrainian. Someone here looks brash and confident, and someone here looks awkward and foppish. I'm like, I don't want to be stereotypical about Americans and Brits here, but this guy looks like a British guy. This guy looks like an American guy, and you got solution in between. Anyway, they're all doing sort of getting together and discussing supply of weapons, ammunition, anti-aircraft and electronic defense equipment, remote demining equipment, and so on and so forth. Brilliant. That's all good stuff. There needs to be a lot of close working between those three nations and all the allies, of course. US is pushing Iran to stop supplying drones to Russia in exchange for sanctions relief, the Financial Times has learned. And it's an interesting way of doing it. So I don't think we can heavily sanction Iran much more and have too much effect. So how can we get them to stop making stuff for Russia? Well, actually, the carrot sometimes, or more often than you think, works more effectively than the stick. Stick is not one of any parenting courses will tell you that, hey, carrots are far more effective than stick. According to the newspaper, the administration of US President Joe Biden raised the issue with the Islamic regime at indirect talks in Qatar and Oman this year. Tehran, which officially denies using its drones in Ukraine, has repeatedly asked Moscow to stop using them in the war, but Washington wants more concrete steps. And it could be that, hey, we will stop sanctioning you this, so you'll be able to get some money in the coffers through this kind of way if you stop providing these to Ukraine, and if that helps that outcome, then it's fine by me as far as I'm concerned. And then as soon as they start breaking that commitment, then you go back to taking that away from them. So, yeah, I'd say that's probably a good option for the US to take there. Ukraine will not receive F-16 fighter jets this autumn or winter, said Yuri Ignat from the Ukrainian Air Force. That's pretty annoying, I guess. And yeah, according to him, there were high hopes for the planes as they could become part of the air defense and help protect Russia's missiles terrorism. Quote, but as it was, the issue has shifted. We realize that our pilots will soon be learning, but at the same time, strengthening of our air defense needs to be done, the Air Force speaker says. So I guess he's being a bit of a pragmatist here, not getting angry because he doesn't want to bite the hand that feeds him. But there is a delay, and we've seen repeated delays going on. Romanians have offered, there again, at the forefront of providing the place to do a lot of the training, and that was repeated yesterday. I didn't talk about it in my news piece, but they are still up there. But yeah, just continued delays on that front. Frustrating. Right, Bulgaria will join the G7 declaration on security guarantees to Ukraine, says the Bulgarian government. That's really good. This kind of declaration came out of the NATO summit, as far as I remember, and G7 plus lots of other nations are, Greece the other day signed up to it as well. Now Bulgaria to support security guarantees for Ukraine. Right, former French President Sarkozy continues his pro-Russia stance. I didn't realize actually that he had been doing this, but he says Crimea is historically Russian territory, ignoring the indigenous Tatars. He also advocates referenda in occupied territories, echoing Kremlin lines, and not saying how he'll bring back the dead to vote. Right. I mean, my French view is, Thierry, let me know what you think about Sarkozy here. I think he should go back to just listening to his wife sing, like Carla Bruni, Coco Medi. Is a great song. She's a great songwriter. He would do well to just be in retirement, listen to his wife sing. Is all I can say. No, Sarkozy, no. Right, a third of the entire budget of Ukraine, I said I'd talk about this, is spent on salaries and payments to the military. That is phenomenal. This is reported by the Ministry of Finance with reference to the data of the State Treasury Service. It's just a phenomenal amount. But then these guys are at war, and this is an existential crisis for Ukraine, right? So they are going to be throwing everything at war. When you see similar sort of numbers for Russia, it's more of a problem for Russia because they are the ones doing the offensive actions here, as in they are the invaders, and they are spending comparable amounts and screwing over their economy for no good reason other than Putin's imperialistic, narcissistic intentions. So this is a problem, but what you'd expect for Ukraine, it's a real problem for Russia, and I'm not just trying to sugarcoat this. As I say, Ukrainians are going to be throwing everything at this. They've also had their nation, repetitively bombed and hit, and they're going to be wanting to recruit as many soldiers to stop the invasion happening, whereas the Russians don't need to be doing what they're doing. The Ukrainians need to be doing what they're doing. And that underwrites quite a significant difference there. Iran began to actively increase oil supplies to China, displacing Russian oil with discounts. Wow. So this could be one way in which Iran could be encouraged, perhaps, and Russia can be disadvantaged. China's purchases of Iranian oil reached a 10-year record, while Russian oil supplies fell to their lowest level since the beginning of the year. I wonder if it can fall further. I mean, that to me is something to look out for. In July, a bit of a problem here. Japan increased grain imports from Russia by over 5,600% compared to July 2022. Now, Japan's Ministry of Finance confirmed the figures, which are so dramatic because of low imports a year ago. So they dropped a lot probably because of the war, and then they're just creeping back up. However, the year-to-date increase is well over 500%. Blood money, says Tim White. Japan, what are you doing? Talking out both sides of your mouth there, but you have these problems where, hey, you need food to feed your population. You hate what they're doing, but you need their food. and if they're stopping grain getting out from the Black Sea and Ukraine providing that food, then Russia. This is one of Russia's successes: is screwing the Ukrainian grain export and saying, "Oh, by the way, we make loads of grain. Would you like some?" Yeah. Right, and I'm going to finish off with the Killers. I mean, come on, Killers, what are you doing here? During a concert the other day in Georgia, the singer of the Killers, it's Brendan Flowers, brought a drummer on who turned out to be Russian. So they often bring drummers. Bands do this, like Foo Fighters, lots of bands, Green Day. They bring on people from the audience to play an instrument, and they're genuinely really good, and it's all like amazing. But the drummer they brought on happened to be Russian and brought him onto stage. And the lead singer spoke about the brotherhood of Russia and Georgia. These words were followed by protests from a booing audience, which caused part of the audience to leave the hall. Now, this is not a good look, right? When your crowd is sticking the middle finger up at you, you don't know your audience, right? Like a bit of knowledge about Georgia there would probably be useful. And now there are lots of memes going around about the Killers, and just is not gone down well with music fans and Georgians in particular. So yeah, poor choice there from the Killers. They came up with a statement. I was going to read the statement yesterday, actually, but the statement was all kind of like meh, real kind of insipid stuff from Brendan Flowers, and it's just like, yeah, no, don't do it. Just say, yeah, we cocked up there. That was a real wrong, and sorry about that. Russia suck. That would be it. That would be a good statement. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate all of your support. I will give a list of names once I'm back in the UK of people that have been so wonderful. Thank you for that. Take care, and I will speak to you tomorrow now.